Okay, so we're gonna get started. So I'll just start by introducing myself again. My name is Dr. Amira Isu. I'm one of the family medicine residents here and co-founder of AIMS. I have three amazing panelists with us today, and I'm gonna let you guys each introduce yourselves. So please take a minute to introduce yourselves. You wanna go ahead, Rob?
Sure, I'll start. So my name is Robert Paproski. I'm the co-founder and the chief technology officer at Nanostics. I originally have a Bachelor of Science here at the U of A in pharmacology, and then I did my PhD in the U of A as well in oncology, the study of cancers. So through a variety of different research projects here at the U of A, we had some good results as now as a research associate with Dr. John Lewis with some of our earlier work with some microflow cytometry, which I may be able to talk about a bit later on. That eventually led to the creation of Nanostics, which was a company for, original product was for looking at men with aggressive forms of prostate cancer. So I'll probably just leave it there.
So I'm Tim Tran. I'm a software developer at DrugBank. I graduated from the University of Alberta's software engineering program back in 22, right at the start of the COVID pandemic. So that was a fun time. And I've been working with DrugBank for about a year and a half. And at DrugBank, what we do is we're essentially a drug and biochemical database. We collect structured drug and biochemical data from all kinds of sources and structure it and clean it and sell that to different customers who need to use it for different research and development purposes.
Hi, I'm Randy Duguay. I'm the CEO of a local company called HealthGauge. My background is in engineering, but I think a good portion or majority of my career has been in commercialization and innovation type of development work. I also have my co-founder Bruce Matichuk, CTO, here today. He's the fellow that does all the lifting on our software development and our machine learning tools. And we secured a patent in the specialized area of wearable technologies, combined sensors and neural net machine learning techniques. And we're expanding on that. Importantly, to really use everyday solutions like wearable devices to collect information and make it more accessible for people to take action in being a healthy life. So,
Awesome. Can we get a round of applause to our panelists? All right, so why don't we start with you, Robert? So you co-founded Nanostics. Can you tell us a little bit more about that journey? Like how did it go from ideation phase to an actual startup to where it is today?
Sure. So coming from the university, we did a lot of research with Dr. John Lewis, who was the main PI, and he's the CEO of Nanostics. Our research project was mostly focused on basically trying to analyze small particles inside of the blood. And we were, at the time, not really so much focused on being a company. It was just a research project at the university here. And so using the microflow cytometry platform, which is able to analyze a whole bunch of small little particles inside the blood. It's similar to a flow cytometer that some of you may be familiar with that analyzes whole cells, but the microflow cytometry device can analyze much smaller particles at closer to 100 nanometers to 1 micron in size. So we were interested in this because a lot of the particles that we care about that could be quite diagnostically useful would be called extracellular vesicles. So these are types of particles that all, like blebs that come off of all cells, healthy cells, disease cells, but they come off at a much larger amount than what you'd find from cells. And each one cell can give off thousands of these extracellular vesicles. So we want to know whether or not if we analyze extracellular vesicles in the blood, can we determine people that would have aggressive forms of prostate cancer better than just looking at whole cells in the blood. So we had some pretty good initial data with our microflow cytometry and the research lab here at the U of A. And eventually, John was much more the business person involved with all of this. So he knew quite a few philanthropists that wanted to donate money, become angel investors and start up the company. So I was just kind of pulled along on the ride, and I was doing a lot of the data analysis, a lot of the software developments, making the AI models, et cetera. So I just followed John under in his wing, and then Nanostics was created from that in 2017.
So it sounds like you had a really good kind of mentor to work with who mentored you through all this. Tim, who was your mentor growing up and how did that influence you?
So I would say I've had a lot of mentors growing up and throughout my career. But right now, I would say that at DrugBank, someone who I consider a really great mentor is my boss, Alex Wilson. And he's also the team lead of the Knowledge and Insights team at DrugBank. So the Knowledge and Insights team is the machine learning and AI team. And I would say that I consider him a really great mentor to me because I think he's a really great listener, and some of the conversations we have are really great. And I feel like we kind of work together really well and in order to kind of align both like what I'm interested in learning about and growing in, and aligning that with the interest of the company and the work that I'm doing. And so I feel like because of that, we work really well together, and I've been able to learn a lot from my mentor.
That's great. Yeah, mentors are very, very important. So Randy, you're also a founder. I'm wondering
Yes.
how was your experience compared to Robert's from ideation phase to where your company is right now?
Wow. I would say like every startup has got its own story. And we're talking about like very specialized fields of, biotech and digital health and so on. And, some of the things I think would be similar, of course, is it's not a one-man game, right? I mean, you're really percolating ideas and you have to bounce those around with a number of people. And you're constantly looking for the smartest people you can associate yourself with and start assembling things. And I think that's definitely a similarity. And why, frankly, I'm really happy to say we were happy to support and sponsor this program here today, because these are the rooms where a lot of smart people congregate, and there's a lot of passion here, right? So that's another thing I think is really common is you start thinking about an idea that you think is important to invest in, and that's not a money point, that's a heart point, and that's something I think is pretty common in this field. So
Yeah, so you bring this idea of teamwork and the importance of teamwork. What did your team look like at the beginning? Was it just you and your mentor?
There's definitely a few of us that were involved. There was Desmond Pink, who was right over there, Catalina Vasquez, John, and myself, where I think we're the original four. And then we had Colin Koros that came on, who was more so involved in the commercial aspect. He's Chief Commercialization Officer. Catalina was involved in all our operations. She's very, very good with organization. Desmond is involved with doing a lot of the wet lab work and developing the assays themselves with the microflow cytometer. So there's definitely a lot of different people that have expertise in different areas. And that's not even including all the regulatory people we have to bring in, because when you want to make a medical device, you have to, of course, comply with regulations, and that's a huge aspect as well.
Can you tell us a little bit more about going through those regulatory aspects?
Oh boy, nightmares. But no, it's a very long process. We were founded in 2017, and to this day, we're still working on our quality management system. We have, I don't know how many hundreds of documents. There's a lot. So depending on what type of regulations you're going for, that's going to determine what type of what you need in your quality management system. In Alberta, if you want to have a lab here, there's the CPSA, College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta, that has the 12 quality system essentials, I believe it is, and deals with all the things for information management, auditing, training, all that stuff. And there's other international standards that go even more in depth. So it's a very lengthy process. You have to have people who know what they're doing. And if you don't have a lot of people like that, you have to get consultants to help you out along the way. Yes, and it takes years and potentially millions of dollars in order to try and do this, which is one of the big reasons why it's so difficult for labs that just do a lot of this, preliminary work in academia to actually try and deploy these models. If you want to get FDA approval, it's a medical device, assuming it has something to do with changing clinical management of your patients. And to actually go through all of that is extremely extensive and difficult and time consuming. But there's a lot to learn along the way. And but it's important for patient safety, though.
Thank you. Is there anything you have to add, Randy, to that?
well, testing. No, I would agree. I mean, I don't think we're as far along as you are, but you know, they're all a journey. You know, when you're formulating an idea, you're not drawing a straight line of, okay, today do product, this test it, do the regulatory stuff. You're really percolating all these things or working these things as you go. And something I would add to it is, there isn't going to be a perfect way, right? You kind of have to do some discovery. And most organizations, including the regulatory bodies and the consultants, they will work with you. What you want to do is you want to be honest about where you're at, and you want to be honest and clear about where you're going, and then you need to do the work. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Tim, is DrugBank considered a startup, or is it like a full-blown company now?
So DrugBank is still considered a startup, I believe.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about your journey to joining a startup? Because that's a pretty big thing to dedicate yourself to.
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't actually say I dedicated myself to joining a startup. I was not particularly looking for like a startup or like a big company, because prior to DrugBank, I was working at the Public Health Agency of Canada, working on some like machine learning type applications. But I came across DrugBank, and I thought that the work DrugBank was doing was really interesting, and I liked that I could apply my machine learning skills to this startup environment. I do enjoy the startup environment because it is like very fast paced, and you get to kind of learn a lot of different skills that are adjacent to what you're working on, not just specializing in one thing. So yeah.
So how did you actually learn machine learning? Was that from school, or was that from experience? How did you get there?
So my first experience with machine learning was actually when I was working as a student at the Public Health Agency of Canada. So I basically interned there for a bit, and then after I graduated, I went back to work there. But I worked on machine learning while I was an intern there, and so there was a lot of like kind of learning on the job. There actually wasn't another like data scientist or machine learning expert on the team. So it was actually like a very new experience for me. But that was really fun because I got to do a lot of like research and learning about this new thing. And it was really cool to be able to just like dive into this thing that I hadn't seen before, and kind of start, seeing how it would be used in like a real world application. And so, yeah, a lot of it was just like kind of learning online on my own, and like with the help of like some of like my teammates. And then after that, I did end up taking a machine learning course in university as well. But I would say the majority of it was kind of like self-driven learning.
Okay, great. So Robert, your company also uses machine learning. Can you tell us a bit about how it uses it and how you became involved in machine learning?
Yeah, so it depends on what type of data set we're using in terms of what type of machine learning we're doing. Most of it's structured based. So the data set itself will be, you could have it in a spreadsheet essentially. So for that reason, we end up using a lot of relatively more basic classifiers, such as logistic regression works quite well in terms of it doesn't overfit very much, but we've used quite a bit of algorithms like XGBoost, random forest, etc. How I got involved with it was pretty much at just the research stage, in terms of when we have this microflow cytometer, it can get approximately millions of events in terms of all the different particles it's detecting from each blood sample, and within less than 5 minutes. And then from all these different particles that we get from each sample itself, we will know the optical parameters of them, in terms of what's the light scatter, which is approximately the size of these particles. What's the fluorescence when we have different antibodies with fluorophores on them, to get an idea of what protein expression might be on each particle. And then when you have all these millions of data points, you have to figure out, okay, who has aggressive forms of prostate cancer? You have to come up, distill it down to that one answer. So the machine learning was helpful in that as well. So I didn't have anyone really teach me about it, but thankfully I knew enough about programming from my my interest in video games and development essentially. So I just basically went online, and there's just lots of documentation about how to use a lot of these libraries in Python, R and MATLAB, etc. And so it was self-taught essentially. But yeah, there's just, the community is fantastic internationally in terms of wanting to spread information, making sure everyone can find out how to actually do machine learning. If you have a little bit of interest in it and some dedication, you can, pretty much anyone can learn how to do it. So it's nice.
Yeah, well, that's really reassuring. Anybody can learn machine learning. So Randy, how does your experience compare? Were you also self-taught, and how does your company use machine learning?
Well, the first thing I'll say is nobody in my company looks to me to do any programming, so we'll start with that. But I actually do have some background in machine learning, if you can believe it, going back to 1996, and I was doing my master's degree. And so I learned about neural nets, and I learned about convolutional neural nets, and I programmed in a spreadsheet, to start. And so you can learn these things conceptually and really understand it. So that helps me a lot. But the real pro in the room is Bruce Matichuk, and he's got a whole team of characters that really take it to a whole other level for us. And so we're really working on the quantified self. And I'm really pleased that we've been able to build an amazing team of smart AI machine learning characters. And we use the Isaac supercomputer at the university and other tools. And so you learn all the various things that you need to really crank some big numbers.
Can you tell us more about Isaac from what you know?
Well, I can tell you that, what we do with it is of course, so we're doing a simultaneous capture of electrocardiogram and digital pulse. And to me, this is just a table stakes game in the game of helping people understand and collect their personal health information. We take those data assets, and we process that using a variety of techniques, some neural net techniques. And so there's a lot of paired data sets that has to go together. And we just, the team just continually works on different methods to refine and improve on those data sets. So it's a huge exercise of getting good data, knowing how to process that, knowing creating the various neural nets outline, and then running it through the Isaac supercomputer. And our view is that we want to continue actually to expand on how we apply those those tools and those techniques. So we're just at the beginning point of working on those kind of solutions.
Well, that sounds very exciting. We're going to take a brain break. I'm going to ask each of you a yes or no question. Okay, so you can only answer with yes or no. Okay, so why don't we start with Robert? Do you believe in aliens?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Wait, I have another question for you. Anime?
Yes. Big yes.
Nice, okay. Randy, do you own Bitcoin?
I don't.
Okay, Robert, horror movies?
No.
Tim, have you ever fainted?
No. You look so surprised.
No, I had no expectations. No. Randy, pineapple on pizza?
No.
Okay. Okay, let's get back to business. So, Tim, do you ever feel imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so I do actually, especially sitting right next to two co-founders. But yeah, jokes aside, I do feel imposter syndrome from time to time, just because I think in this field, and especially at DrugBank, like everyone is really smart, and I work on a interdisciplinary team full of like data scientists, software engineers, and pharmacologists. And so a lot of times I'm working with information related to biology, chemistry, stuff like that, even machine learning concepts that I am not familiar with. And so sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming, but I think that's why it's really important to have like colleagues who can understand that and who can help you out when you need it and answer all the questions that you might have. So I try to remind myself that it's okay to, to not know things. And sometimes it's, it can help to, accept that it helps to, I guess, be willing to be, I guess, like the idiot in the room, just asking a lot of questions, because you might find that a lot of other people might be having the same sort of questions. So yeah.
Awesome. Does that resonate with either of you, Robert or Randy?
I don't ever feel like I have imposter syndrome, but I definitely feel like there's a lot of information whenever you're a startup and you're first time in your position. There's a lot of stuff you're going to have to know. I don't ever feel overwhelmed by it so much, but I just realize that it's just going to take some time to get to where we need to go. It's a challenge. It's going to be a challenge for anyone trying to do any of this stuff, given how rare it is for anyone to be having predictive models as medical devices approved by the FDA or Health Canada. Very, very few people do it. It's a challenge, but I definitely look forward to it and getting to the finish line.
So you use the word challenge quite a bit. What are some challenges that you faced as a co-founder?
Probably one of the biggest ones is understanding the regulatory requirements of actually building a medical device. What is it that you actually have to do? And it's sometimes you don't want to think of it as just a checkbox, but what's also a good best practices to make good software, good products. First time going into that, trying to understand, okay, all the different documentation that you need to do in terms of having your development plans. You have to have all your user needs, requirements, specifications. And then you have to think about all the different testing plans you have to make for those and what types of testing are you going to do. May have master validation plans. It's just reports for everything. There's quite a bit of a process that you've never seen this before because you're just an academic in university. It's like, oh my God, this is a lot of stuff I've never done before. But once you get used to it, you kind of see from all the other different types of ISO documents of what's required for making medical devices, you kind of learn the process. And then you just one day at a time until you learn it and do it.
Okay, thank you for that answer. So Randy, I'm just wondering, so your medical device, it's a physical thing that you can hold.
It is.
Yeah, so how was the manufacturing process for that? And
Well,
tell us a little bit
I'll
about
talk
that?
to it a bit. So we do have a wrist wearable device, but we're not a hardware manufacturer. Now we have done a lot of prototyping, which has really been fundamental, for what we're doing. But our regulatory approach is software as a medical device, and that's an important thing. And I don't want to go too deep on those topics, but you have to do basically the same thing. And so anything that has an outcome, that could be used or interpreted for medical purpose or clinical purposes, is a regulated thing, and there's a reason for that. So anyways, the manufacturing process for us, we're not as far down on the regulatory process, and we're also approaching market with the view of having a wellness solution as well as a robust Class 2 SAMD. So anyway, that's a little bit of us. We have to go through the exact same process.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So as we know, we need really large data sets in order to use machine learning. Where did you get your data from? Or did you generate your own data?
Well, okay, I'll start. For what we're doing, having in-house, we could do a bunch of in-house work on our initial product developments and software dev, even with our prototypes. But to get that to the level that you need it to, it has to be done more formally. And so we created a relationship with the University of Alberta's entity called ST Innovations, which is a commercialization entity working with the Faculty of Rehabilitation Medicine, the Faculty of Medicine, and Smart Networks. And I think that's a hugely important asset in the community, because if we're going to get better at this field we're talking about here, we need, for me to house that kind of organization to do formal, research and validation work would be hugely expensive. So anyways, we're doing that through the University of Alberta, and we're also doing it through other mechanisms and academic institutions.
Okay, thank you. So Tim, I know DrugBank kind of makes its own data sets. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So DrugBank compiles all kinds of data from FDA labels, research papers, different textbooks and things like that, containing large amounts of like unstructured text data about biochemistry, drugs, things like that. And so we kind of pull all of that data in and structure it and validate it, and then store it in our structured database, which allows different people who are developing medical technologies, like researchers, data scientists, to access that data easily using their own software.
So how would one go about accessing these data sets?
Well, first they have to pay for it. And then, so we do offer data in SQL format as well as XML and JSON. So, and we do offer like extensive documentation on how to manipulate that data. So it's really up to those researchers as to how exactly they want to go about pulling in that data. So we kind of leave it kind of up to them, but we do have like an awesome team of like customer success members who are like knowledgeable about how that data is structured and can provide support for people who are trying to use our data and access it.
Okay, thank you. Robert, do you have anything else to add kind of related to data use and collection?
I suppose. So when it comes to data use, well, it's really, really important that the data that you're going to be using has all the fields you'll need in terms of if you want to get regulatory approval for your medical device. And from some of the talks we've had with the FDA, they want a lot. So it's not just a matter of, okay, I need the information that's the inputs into my model, and I need to know what I'm predicting, which is the target. And if I have those, I'm good. No, you're going to need to know comorbidities of your patients. You need to know the treatment history of your patients. The type of fields inside these databases that you need is extensive and typically what's not going to be found in the vast majority of other people's databases. So you have to be very careful when you start doing these clinical studies that if you want to do these clinical studies, you have to figure out, does it really have everything I need? If not, how do I supplement that? So that's really, really important.
Okay, great. We're going to take another brain break. So this time, I'm going to ask each of you a question, and you'll answer with 1 or 2 words, no explanations needed. Okay, so we'll start with you, Robert. Favorite childhood cereal?
Lucky Charms.
Solid. Tim, if you could rewatch any movie right now, which one would it be?
Lord Rings.
Okay, Randy, best candy to ever exist.
That's candy. I'm gonna go with M&Ms.
Okay, Robert, superpower.
Flight.
That's a good one. Tim, how many cups of coffee do you drink on an average day?
0.
What do you drink instead?
Water.
What is your favorite illicit drug? I'm just kidding. Okay, let's get back to business. So I'm just wondering, in terms of, there's kind of this theme of teamwork that was spoken of. What about collaborations with other, like you mentioned a little bit of collaboration with Isaac and ST Innovations. Robert, who have you guys collaborated as Nanostics?
So another story about talking with the FDA. When we asked them about, when we told them about what we plan to do in order to try and basically commercialize or get approval for ClarityX prostate, our main test for aggressive prostate cancer, they told us that we didn't have to have just one validation set. We needed 3 validation sets, and they have to be from completely different clinical sites than the first one. So this is not something that's obviously easy to get, and you're going to have to do some collaboration to get those extra data sets. So we've been doing some collaboration with a group in the Czech Republic in order to get some clinical data from their side, and we had to do some surveys with a variety of different people and ask them like, do you have all these fields that we're looking for? The vast majority didn't, but that group did. And we also have some collaborators at Johns Hopkins University as well that have all the different test fields that we needed, or I should say data fields that we needed for our test. So yeah, but it's very, very important to have collaborators.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we're kind of nearing the end. I'm just wondering, Tim, do you have any advice for a young professional? So we have lots of kind of students, young professionals in the audience. What kind of advice would you provide them?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess one piece of advice I would give is to remember that your career is it's a project that you build over time. It's not like something that you get your first job and then that's like what you're stuck in for the rest of your life. A career is something that you really work on over time, over the course of your entire life, I believe. And, it's up to you to craft it and to really figure out like what it is that you want to do and what you like doing and how you can pursue those things. And it's not always, it can be a bumpy journey sometimes. You don't always land up where you want to right away. But I think just always having that mentality that like, this is a work in progress. And, it's a bit of a meandering path, but just try to enjoy it along the way. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Randy, any advice for anybody who wants to found a startup?
Well, it's not for everybody, and it kind of ties in with some of the notes earlier. Sorry. Oh, 5. Okay. But it gets down to the point on purpose. Making a startup, while it's not for everyone, for those that have the passion and the interest, then go get it, because it's incredible. I worked in a corporate organization, TELUS, for 25 years. I had a great career there, but I've been an entrepreneur now for 10 years. And it's the most enriching thing I've ever done. There's less of a security net there, but you get to address something that you can see is important. And if you can see your way through that, and you can find other people to support you, and that includes investors, includes your team, and importantly, it includes the people that you're serving, clients. If you can make something like that, do it, because it's incredibly rich to do.
Thank you for that. Robert, any advice for somebody who's in academia right now who wants to transition to making their own startup or joining industry?
Probably get advice from someone better than me, but you find the right people that can give you a better path in terms of it, or find a good path for you. It's probably not the best person who comes from a business side in terms of how to actually go through all that. But yeah, it's very, very challenging. Find the right people.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Let's have one more round of applause for our panelists here. And I think we have time, about 5 minutes, for questions from the audience. Do you want to do, I'm going to put the mic up and then I'll get people to come up here and ask their questions.
Robert, you were mentioning about collecting data for medical devices with FDA approval, that with the training data, you need extra fields. And you said something about supplementing. If your original training data does not have the fields you need, are there ways of augmenting it with, like, on average, this is what these people would look like? Or
it's not quite that simple, but you may be able to enrich if people are willing to go back into the electronic systems to try and find the data you might be missing.
Okay, so it
So-
needs to be tied to the actual patients.
Yes,
But you might be able to
yes.
go back and get that data depending on where it's
So
stored.
hopefully, if they have a good medical record system, they should be able to go back and it may take some medical students quite a bit of time to figure out for patient X, Y, Z, what did they take any treatments during this time? But it's a little bit of work. And if you have to do that, obviously there's extra costs and try to get that data, but it can be worth it.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for potentially any of the panelists. So I believe I can speak for many of our audience here, myself being an undergraduate student. A lot of us are looking for positions to supplement our learning while we are in school. As three potential recruiters yourselves, or maybe recruiters, I'm not entirely sure. What qualities do you personally look for in students who you think will make good like working partners?
Sure. So I could start. So for me, I think just like demonstrating like a passion to learn and curiosity and expressing like what your interests are, because I think the big part about working at a startup like DrugBank is that you get to wear a lot of hats. And so it's actually a really awesome opportunity to expand your skill set and do things that learn things that you wouldn't normally have learned if you were like in a bigger, potentially a bigger company, but just like working on like some highly specialized thing. So like I think just expressing like a lot of your passions, a lot of your interests that don't necessarily have to be, related to that exact role that you're applying to is just something that I think is really good. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else want to add something?
Good question. And, and for companies like ours, we're always looking, because we're always planning on scaling, and there's always like 10 more things that I'm not getting done that need to get done. And so it's really true, so we're looking for people that know how to be, you can say self-motivated, but it really gets down to bring yourself to the table. I get this question a fair bit. Show up. We live in this world where we've got a lot of this remote kind of hybrid stuff going on, and the world's never going to go back to 9 to 5. And so there's a certain degree of expectation, and if I can't trust you to do stuff that I just kind of communicate and get done, and you reach back and we have communication. So it's that dynamic of being able to do the things that you can get done. And so it's what you're bringing to the table. Your degrees are important, but more importantly, what you're doing and solving problems and how you do it, way more important.
I'd agree with that. I really, really like having students or workers that are really flexible and intelligent and know how to do things and learn things very quickly. I've had people who didn't have any knowledge on how to do something at first, but if they can pick it up very quickly and they can be very efficient thereafter, I'm perfectly fine doing the mentoring. I'd much rather that than someone who says they know what they're doing and they kind of do, but they're not really motivated that well, or if they don't know how to do something brand new, but they just know that one little thing well, it's not really that great. Someone who can really adapt is, for me, one of the most important things.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I got a couple of quick questions for you and thoughts. When I was in academia, one of the biggest challenges we found was when you get out into the real world, you're not good at marketing or selling, you don't have the first ingredient along. And I like your comments on that's not well covered in academia. And actually it's looked down upon quite often as a career possibility, yet in the real world, it's number one. Because if you don't get the sales, okay, you into step two. The other question is related to capital. I'd like your comments on somebody has to make some money has to come in. And the last question is, you got 10 things on your plate, 20 things on your plate. There must be a lot of small opportunities that a little guy like me could maybe help you out with or take over. And we could maybe do that separate from what government is funding right now. Pick any of the questions.
Are those questions or statements?
Well,
Okay, so you were
Who
agreeing
you-
with some of the
well,
stuff
who
we
you-
said. Were you asking like what like better strategies for for people to get?
well, how are you getting your sales? How do you market? And
Oh,
then what
okay.
to sell?
Okay, so for Nanostics, it's important to have people that do that specifically. I'm not great when it comes to business whatsoever. I like just dealing with the numbers. But when we took in Colin Koros, he founded a previous company as a CEO. I think it was called Delta Genomics. And so we have him being full-time on understanding how to bring in money for the company. And so it's important to try and bring in as much money as you can. Try not to give up too much of your equity of the company as possible. So what kind of non-diluted funding can you get through grants, whatnot. So having people who understand the different types of granting programs that are available where you can get good funds, finding people who know investors who are interested, whether they're venture capitalists or philanthropists. That's a whole different skill set. And there's some people who are really, really good at being able to raise that money. So you want those people in your team.
Good answer.
Doing digital health and biotech, just off ground, like we built our company just pretty much off the ground, and so you step it, you get your angel investors, bootstrap, and you step it up. But one thing that's a reality in this business is you've got no revenues out of the gate, and you're probably looking at no revenues and losses for at least 3 years. And and so there's other parts of the world that know how this business works. Like Boston is like the preeminent one, but you must have a business case, and you must have enough assets there that you can move that capital forward. But the world doesn't want to see a 5-year plan on revenue generation. You got to be generating revenues within that 3-year time frame. And there's different ways you work at it. And your business model out of the gate is also junk, right? So that's other reality, because you've got a bunch of things to do. And the other thing I'm finding that it's and you just figure it out. You have to move your organization from 70-80% on product build, and then you have to change that balance while you're increasing your capital inflows to start to put more into the business development side, as well as addressing regulatory burdens that other industries don't have in the same way. It's very specialized. So, it's a two-way street on this capital investor discussion. One of the challenges about being here in Alberta is we don't have enough investors that actually know how this business works. And so we're getting, so we get the pull in other places, and that's all fine. We've got to work together. I really have a lot of belief in this community as far as building more digital health companies. But this conversation here on capital and capital efficiency and protecting equity, we got to get better at that.
We should have another session on that alone.
All right, thank you so much, Robert, Tim, and Randy. Can we give them one more last round of applause?